Yeah. Uh-oh. Wow.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Tony, and you're listening to the Tampa Morgue with what's up, Mr. Ed Webb.
Part 2, Mr. Anderson, what's going on?
So we recorded this segment. Now we're doing it again because we had some technical issues, but we do have with us tonight Mr. Pat from Hellwitch. What's up, dude?
Worshipping Satan and drinking baby's blood.
What else do you do on a Friday night? Oh, wait, it's Thursday for you guys. It's Friday.
Thursday. Yeah, what else do you do on a Thursday night? I'm not at the fucking bowling alley, that's for sure.
You're not at the Barbie movie.
Not at the Barbie movie. No. Fucking Barbie movie. Really? A Barbie movie? Really?
Who the fuck, right? I mean, what is that, right? I mean, I don't even know. And there's grown adults going to see it. Like, I know people who are like, I'm going to see the Barbie movie. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right?
You know? I mean,
it's all about money, brother. It's all
are
about
they
money.
posers? You gotta say, are you a poser? Are you what we call a poser?
It's a fucking Barbie movie. I mean, Jesus.
Wow, that's pretty rough. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, man. But so you guys are, so Ed, you're in Tampa, and Pat, where are you? You're in Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, I'm in Coral Springs, which is like a suburb of Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, closer out west to the Everglades from Fort Lauderdale.
So it's hot as fuck there too, I guess, where you're at.
It's fucking 95 every day, and it fucking sucks.
Yeah, see, here it was pretty hot this week, but we're like in the Baltics here, you know, we have like 3 more weeks of like nice weather, and then it's like death cold for like 6 months, you know, here. It gets
really
awful, man. Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Awful, dude, but yeah, man, but we are really glad to have you today, dude, and you know.
Well, I mean, thanks for having me, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
No
I appreciate you having me. Fuck
and
yeah.
before we take a trip down memory lane of you know the whole Hellwitch past and stuff like that, how you been, man? What's everything going good on your end?
Yeah, just we just played the Destroying Texas Fest like a week ago, and just got back from doing that, and just back to practicing now, and working on new songs, and getting ready to play in Tampa in a couple months.
Yeah, we just
it's going.
So you guys are 40 years for you guys now, right? You're rolling on 40 years now.
Yeah, next year will be the Hellwitch 40th anniversary, and we're hoping to do a lot for that, and really ramp it up more than we have in the past. Well, since COVID anyway, definitely going to ramp it up from the COVID days.
Yeah, that was shit.
Yeah, it was a little rough there for a little while. Yeah.
So you guys started out. So I know. So basically Gainesville, right? Like 84 was with the beginning for you, basically, right? And the thing I find fascinating about you, Pat, is you didn't even want to be in a band, did you? Really, when you first started?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where you got that. Maybe I told you that, but yeah, I mean, when me and my college roommate Harry formed Hellwitch in our apartment in Gainesville in '84. Before that, I liked playing the guitar in the living room, playing along with records, and just kind of learning the instrument. And I thought being in a band that's a whole can of worms. And I mean, what am I going to do with other musicians and having to work with them and write songs with other people? And I just thought, wow, that's not I wasn't like against it, but I didn't. It didn't appeal to me. Definitely did not appeal to me.
No, I know you've told the story before, but I mean, obviously, it's a pretty interesting story. Your first demo, right? You recorded with Harry.
Yes.
2 cassette players, correct? I'll let you explain it. I'll let you tell the story, but I know I do know the details.
Yes. Again, we had an apartment. We were both going to UF, and we were roommates, in an apartment off campus. And our kitchen, I have to give credit here to Harry, because Harry said, you're decent on guitar. You can play along with Ride the Lightning, and you can play along with some Slayer songs. And I was like, yeah, because I mean, I started playing guitar in like, 78, 79, and I was, learning Kiss and AC/DC and Judas Priest songs and Scorpion songs, and that was what I started for years playing the guitar with that music. And then I got into the underground scene with a couple guys discipled me down in South Florida and Hollywood, and they were into tape trading. They got me into that. And so like 88, 81, I got into tape trading and collecting underground stuff, and heard No Life Till Leather when it came out, and I was obsessed with that. Wow, that there's like this fast picking thing they do just on one string, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? And so I immediately abandoned rock and heavy metal, and I went in that direction with my playing, and started to just do nothing but play that style of music. And by 84, Harry and I were roommates, and he said, you're good. We should write a song and do a song. And I'm like, with what? With who? I'm like, you don't play anything. There's no band. I'm like, well, how are we going to do it? And he's like, I don't know. He goes, just use the cassette decks. I had 2 cassette decks. And because, for tape trading, you had to have cassette deck to dub tapes. And he said, and it had mic jacks in the front. And he said, well, why don't you do it like that, record it with the microphone. And I said, you know what? I said, we can. I go, I've messed around with recording left and right channel and dumping them to the second cassette deck and, bouncing left and right just to left and then recording right channel live on the second deck. And I'm like, okay, I said, we could do drums and guitar on one side, and I said, we'll look at each other in the living room and I'll play and you can, I don't know what we'll do, but I figured out that we had a couple drumsticks, and I figured out that our kitchen chair for our kitchen table set was like a vinyl. It was a vinyl cushion, a vinyl, padded cushion, and he hit that with the drumstick, and it made like a clicky kind of thump noise. And I'm like, all right. I go, how about if I tape the microphone down on the seat cushion? So I taped the microphone to the seat cushion, and then also on the cushion taped a little paperback book. And I said, try that. And, yeah. And so he did it. We did a little sound test, and and I'm like, there's a beat, we could do a beat like that. And I said, but can you keep that going? And he's like, well, I'll try. So then the next part was, he came up with the title Nosferatu, and he says, hey, he's like, Nosferatu. He's like, nobody's done that. He's like, that's a fresh idea. And I was like, all right, I don't care. I'm like, whatever. This is your kind of idea, so. And then he said, all right. He's like, well, come up with a main riff. And I was like, all right. And so, I came up with a couple riffs. This was all over the course of maybe a day or two. And then he said, all right, come up with a chorus riff, So he goes, that would go with Nosferatu. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, whatever. I'll come up with something that goes with Nosferatu. And then he said, all right, in the middle, we need a solo riff where it'll be a different riff and you'll solo. And I was like, all right. And, and then I said, well, then after that, we'll go back to you singing and then we'll end it. And he's like, yeah, that sounds good. So we, put the song together real quick. It was like 4 parts. And we set it up so the left channel was him doing the drums, quote unquote, and then me doing a rhythm guitar. And, we looked at each other and we recorded, and I kind of just played, and usually the drum kind of keeps the beat. And since he wasn't really a drummer and not a musician, like, he followed me. He tried to make the beat go with the guitar, and I tried to play on time and tried to, make it even. And so, yeah, the drums kind of followed the guitar, and there's parts you can hear where the guitar starts and then he comes in like, a second later with the beat, and, I stop and then he stops, and, it's a fucking mess. It's a joke mess. And then we did that. did that left channel, and then I said, yeah, that's pretty rough, you know. And he says, well, let's do a right channel where I'll sing and you can do the rhythm again and solos where the solos go. And I was like, oh, Jesus. I go, I don't know if I can remember to do all that. I go, but let's give it a try. So we did like a couple takes of that, and the second take was better than the first one, but there was a solo at the beginning, you know, Nosferatu, there's a solo at the beginning. And on that demo, I was just didn't have my head wrapped around it. It all was, you know, happening kind of quick. And I just was like, well, screw it. I'm like, just have that rhythm go. And then you start singing and whatever, like the rest of it'll be, you know, it'll just fall into place. But fuck that solo at the beginning. I'm like, I don't want to go back and do a worse version. You know, let's just keep it the way it is. So, we recorded a right channel with him singing and me doing a rhythm guitar and solos. And then we you know, listened back, and I said, man, that's a fucking mess, you know. It's pretty funny. I go, it's not horribly bad, but it's bad. And he's like, no, it sounds good. And you know, he wasn't a musician, I was. I'm like, nah, dude. I'm like, that's up there with fucking Sodom, you know, with the offbeat drums that don't fit with the guitar. I'm like it's like Sodom but worse. And he's like, no, it sounds good. And I'm like, well, whatever. I'm like, it was fun. I'm like, don't give that, because he was tape trading too. We were both big time tape traders. And I'm like, dude, don't give that to anybody. And he's like, oh no, I won't. And probably 3 weeks later, we got mail at our apartment addressed to Hellwitch.
And this is
And I'm
interesting
like,
too,
what
actually, because the mail was from Walter, right? From Quicksand, Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits. Was this the?
It was Tom Capone from Quicksand.
Okay,
Tom Capone. Yeah, Tom Capone was the man, you know. And like, he wrote to me, and I'm like, who, you know, what is this? And he's like, I have a magazine. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And he's like, this will be the first Hellwitch interview ever, right? And I'm like, yeah. I go, you know, and I'm like, yeah, there wasn't supposed to be no Hellwitch interview. The tape was not supposed to be given to anybody, but, you know, so I did the interview with him. And then we started to get mail, like, you know, not tons, but started to get a letter here and there, you know, a couple a week. And everyone liked it. You know, everyone said, hey, you know, the song is good. The demo is good. What are you guys doing? Like, do you have an album coming out? Are you doing more recording? And at that point, I thought, well, I guess it isn't that bad after all. And I thought, well, maybe I could come up with more stuff. And Harry can, you know, we could work together and come up with more stuff. And we started to kind of work on Satan's Wrath together, which was the second song. And then Harry just wasn't really into sitting around and, you know, working on music, being not that he wasn't a musician. And so I, you know, kind of went at it myself at that point. And yeah, you know, we did that.
The first demo I got from you guys was the '86 demo, right? Transgressive. That was that demo with Satan's Wrath on it. You had Nosferatu. Nosferatu appeared a lot.
Yeah, that was kind of, you know, I wasn't still am not a prolific songwriter as far as, you know, how much I get done at a time. But, you know, Nosferatu, you know, I mean, the first demo, I'm like, well, that's not a good representation. It's missing the solo. The drums are all, no drums, you know. I'm like, that deserves a studio version. So on the Transgressive Sentience demo, we did it there, kind of you know, the right way for the first time. And then a year later, I thought, you know, that intro kind of drags it down a little bit. Let's record it, you know, with a better and I changed the solo at the beginning. And so that was even another kind of updated version. There were a few parts in it that were changed. And, you know, the 87 demo was another version of Nosferatu. And then actually on Syzygial Miscreancy, that is even kind of yet another, there's small changes in that version. So that's kind of, the album was the definitive version that we kind of stuck with. But yeah, so that's the humble roots there of the whole thing.
One thing about you guys that I always appreciated, because you guys grew up, like when you guys first started playing, you guys were mixed in with like the Roach Motels, right? A lot of the hardcore punk bands you guys were doing. I mean, you guys were pretty much running that circuit, which and I've heard past interviews with you where you've said it, and I know how this is. You guys were like the heavy of the heavies with these bands, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we were a Gainesville local band, and Gainesville had no metal scene. We were the metal scene, and a lot of the punk people, they were into punk, but there was Slayer had won a lot of them over, and that Slayer really turned a lot of the punk people onto metal, onto extreme metal for, as extreme as it was then. And, we played our first show ever with Roach Motel, who was like a legendary Gainesville band. And we, the punk people liked us. And so from then on, we knew the promoters, that the couple guys in town that did all the out of town bands like DeCroixson and Battalion of Saints and, Gnostic Front and COC. And they always invited us to open the shows. We were very lucky because we didn't really have to, go pounding on their door to, hey, can we open, can you have Hellwitch open, this show? And they were always like, oh yeah, so-and-so's coming, and yeah, we want Hellwitch to open. So we were fortunate enough to be accepted by the punk scene, and we were like, their local Slayer. They're like, well, we got Hellwitch. We don't have, there's no other metal. There's Hellwitch. So yeah, we want, Hellwitch to open up these shows. So we, that was it. I mean, it was always in Gainesville. And then by like 87, we would drive to Orlando or Melbourne to play, like we played with Genitorturers and, another a DRI in 87 in Orlando at the Syrian Lebanese American Club. How diverse. And that was a pretty mayhemic show. And so then we branched out from there and started playing out of town. But the first couple of years, first at least year and a half was pretty much, first year was only Gainesville. We didn't play anywhere else.
It's pretty funny because a lot of, there's a difference of when you play a metal show. There's a different kind of crowd vibe there, totally. Like, I remember like the metal show is more like, everyone's kind of standing back watching at first, kind of. But the punk, they're going nuts. I mean, it's absolutely nuts.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, I mean, growing up in the punk scene first, that was when we started playing metal shows. At first, I have to say, I was like, oh man, these metal people aren't really as cool as the punk people. We were used to them and knew them. Everybody in, Gainesville, it was a small scene, so everyone knew each other. And when we started playing metal shows, I was like, these metal people are kind of not as cool as the punk people. So that took a little getting used to.
Yeah, it's a different thing, and I remember back in high school there was like kind of like sometimes you would go to those shows, and sometimes the punk guys didn't like the metal guys. There was that whole thing it was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of that, man, I was just mentioning that show in Orlando with DRI in '87 with the Genitorturers, and at that show, our bass player then Andy, man, DRI's playing, and we're in the pit. And I look over, and he's on the floor getting stomped by skinheads.
That's how it was.
And I was like, holy. And I went over, and like, I didn't, jump on them. I grabbed his arms and just started pulling him away, sliding him on the floor away from them, up out of the pit, away from them. And we got him to his feet. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you guys? And like, they didn't pursue it anymore. Like, they had stomped him pretty fucking good, and they just kind of, went back into the pit area, and nothing else happened. But he had like a swollen shut eye, and he was a little fucked up there for a while. And I was like, that scared the shit out of me, man. I was like, wow, this Orlando fucking scene I'm like, they don't do this shit in Gainesville.
It was Tampa too, because I saw DRI and I got kicked right in the face from a skinhead that was stage diving with a combat boot right behind. But of course, he's the one that got stomped because some of the metalheads there when he kicked, So yeah, there was a rough man. I lived in the Tampa punk scene, and like when bands like Agnostic Front would come around, wasn't happy.
Yeah,
I was not going.
Yeah,
because I knew there weren't enough
you knew
to be at that show, and I knew I would probably not come home in the same way I entered the building. So yeah, you're right. The punk scene was a different thing. I loved it because I grew up around No Fraud and Belching Penguins
No
sketches, a
Fraud.
bunch of bands like that at the old Sunset Club. I don't know if you ever got to play the Sunset Club, but in
Been
Tampa
there
that was a
many times,
legendary.
never played.
Yeah, man. I mean, seeing like we talked about with Tony, you know, when we were talking about it, you know, Ravage, Amon, before they were fucking, you know, Atheist and obviously Deicide. So seeing all those bands when they started, like you guys, it's crazy to watch how it goes from here to another level as the metal kind of, how do I want to say it, kind of takes over the punk world, because that's what happened.
Yeah.
Eventually, metal took over the punk world, and those guys that you're talking about that were the statues that were standing there became the fucking pit heads that were going ballistic, like at the old Tampa Bay Metal Awards, you know, at
Yeah.
the Master or the Ritz, and you know, it would be nothing short of just a giant fucking slugfest, and that's what needed to happen, because I think people needed to take a kind of a picture of the punk scene and apply it to the metal scene, because it was boring, like you said, back in the day. I mean, nothing's worse than playing with somebody with their arms folded staring at you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I know exactly what you're talking about, Ed, because we would drive to Tampa. I mean, we saw Death and Morbid Angel in like '88. We drove to the Sunset and saw Death and Morbid Angel. And, a few times we drove to Tampa and saw, Amon and Obituary in like, I think, '89. And, I mean, and then of course, like DRI came out with Crossover, so yeah, metal started kind of taking over, and then Agnostic Front with that
Liberty
album
and
where they
Justice.
kind of went metal.
Yeah,
Huh?
Liberty and Justice is where they kind of flipped. When they put Liberty
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Justice
And even
raw,
before that, Agnostic Front had that song that said "Killing's my business and business is fine," and that on
right.
that album, yeah, no cause for alarm. Cause for alarm. Yeah,
So,
and we're like, that's a Megadeth lyric. What the fuck are they doing? And the riff was like an Exodus. It was like a lesson in violence, the guitar riff. And we were
Yep.
like, holy shit, Agnostic Front is fucking going metal, and DRI's going metal, and yeah, but yeah, Belching Penguins and fucking No Fraud. Oh, totally. I
what
saw
was the
both of them many times.
Hated Youth? I think that was the band that did the split with Roach Motel. Like that was a killer split.
And
It's funny because
you
Sorry, Mike. Go
remember
ahead.
Jehovah's
Oh yeah.
Sicknesses?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Wow.
And one thing that we were talking about, me and Ed earlier, which pertains to you actually, is I remember all the public access shows, right? So
Yeah.
Hellwitch was on. I used to get. So y'all know you're a tape trader, which we'll talk about that. You have a huge collection. You ran a site, and when I grew up, I'm from Jersey, so I grew up. Yeah, I can see that shit behind you too. Look at that.
That's about a third. That's about a third of it.
So we used to, up in Jersey, we had these we would have the metal shops on the boardwalks and stuff like that, and they always had the bootlegs and stuff. So I had picked up. Actually, I believe that's when I first got my first Hellwitch demo. Was I picked up like that and Ex Mortis? I was telling Ed or something like that. But you guys were on public access, and it's funny because I remember you guys did one of these specials with this girl and was interviewing you, and you're doing the interview, and you said something like, so he's on there, right? I don't know if you've seen this, but Pat's like, I said something like, do something and kill people dead. So all of a sudden, this girl is interviewing Pat, and I don't know what happened, but you could kind of tell that this show was cut short. It seemed like there was like some kind of panic. Pat, am I right or what? Did they just like cut the show short because of that comment?
No, you know what? I mean, that was said, and that just happened to coincide with the end. It was like, I think, a 5-minute thing or a 10-minute little thing, and they did like little 10-minute, episodes. And that was the end of the time for the segment. So that just happened to coincide with, me saying the right thing at the wrong time or whatever.
Because that was '86. Yeah, that was '86. When I watched the interview, I remember because we used to get these. Like I remember a couple of the Hellwitch, what do they call it? The public access would be on. You would get these concert tapes or bootlegs, and a lot of like bands' media was on there. You would get these weird clips. But I remember that, and I always wondered that.
Morbid, was it?
Huh?
That wasn't with Susie Morbid, was it?
No, it was with a girl named Rhonda. She was the host of the show.
Wow.
And like they were just like a Gainesville talent. You know, they would interview
this was the
Gainesville
days.
artists.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it was in Gainesville. Like, pardon?
Hellwitch was on a few of those. You guys got a few. You did a few of those shows back in the 80s. I think it was 85. You did TV 69. You did with you did the band interview on that one. I mean, you guys
That was March of '86, and the one on After Hours with Rhonda was like January of '86.
Yes, God, some times passed. Yeah, that's. I remember. You know, I mean, well, we always say like that's one thing about Hellwitch that first of all, your vocals. I mean, that's one thing it stands out so much to me. And I always say I'm like, there's a group of bands that made it out of Florida. It makes sense, but I always thought that Hellwitch stood out. You guys, first of all, the way you wrote your songs, the structures, definitely, like I said, the vocals just stood out. Like, I mean, your voice, dude. I mean, and you didn't even want to be a singer either, did you? I mean, it was just like
no, I was forced into that. I was forced into that as well for lack of one. You know, I mean, there was nobody around in Gainesville who wanted to do it, and we were ready to go. The three of us were like, we can play. We were told, you guys can play a show, and I'm like, well, fuck, somebody's got to sing, and Dave and Andy, they were like, I don't know, and I was like, I'll try. I'm like, I'll let's make it happen. I'll try, and we'll do this for now until we find somebody, and then it just kind of worked,
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because the vocals, like I said, it stands out. You can always tell with Hellwitch. I mean, it's just, even like I said, the structures, all that. And I know with your punk influence, I have to ask you, what would you say are a few of your favorite punk records, man? Because I go to that because usually everyone's like, what's your favorite metal record? What's your favorite this? But I also know that you are a connoisseur of the punk scene back in the day. So I'm kind of curious to find out, like, what would be on your list?
I mean, I actually put a little bit of thought into this. There's so many, but I mean, I narrowed it down to like the first one for me was COC Animosity, and when I heard that, I was like, and I mean that was already kind of crossover. That had metal elements in it, and I was just, man, this is the fucking coolest punk thing I've ever heard, and it just. And another thing too, as you know, like back then, everyone sounded different naturally. No two bands really had the same style. And when I heard Animosity, I just was like, man, every song kind of sounds different, like Hungry Child doesn't sound like Positive Outlook, and the song Animosity doesn't sound like Holier, and like all those songs just had such a personality. Each song had its own identity, and I used to listen to Animosity over and over and over, and I still that's probably one of my it's one of my top 5 of all time. And also this is weird. I discovered a band probably 13 years ago from Italy called Ed, and I, was given this CD, which was like they formed, I guess, in the late 90s, and the CD was like songs from like 98 to like 2010 or 11, and 40 something songs on the CD, and there was an era of them around 2003 to 2005 where it was not super, but very technical punk rock, like technical hardcore punk like I've never heard. I mean, I'm listening to it and going, I can't follow one part to the next because they keep changing parts every 3 seconds. It's a new part, then it's another new part, then it's another new part, and I was just like, holy shit! I'm like, I didn't know, there was bands like this that were like really technical punk. And Ed, that compilation CD called Future Primitive, that's one of my top 5 of all time because, like I said, they don't sound like anyone else, and it's so many riffs and so many parts, and the vocals are kind of a combination of Mike Dean and Blaine Fart, and those are two of my favorite vocalists in that genre.
Blaine's awesome.
Yeah, Blaine is real. I was listening to The Accused earlier. Earlier today, I was listening to Maddest Stories Ever Told, and I was like, God damn, this is good.
It's
And
timeless.
yeah, it really is. It really is. And then again, living in Gainesville, I had a friend who, you know, I mean, we were friends with the Punks, but I had one kind of close friend, Fred Carter, and he would buy everything. You know, he'd mail order the latest Punk stuff, and he had everything, and he was always real eager to share it. You know, to like, hey man, check this out. And he had Adrenaline OD, the wacky hijinks of Adrenaline OD, and I was like, I'm like, these guys have pies on their faces on the cover, and I'm like, this looks a little silly, man. I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, no. He's like, it's like metal. It's like fast metal. And I heard that, and I thought, holy shit. I'm like, this is really fast and really kind of weird and quirky and cool. And we ended up covering some Adrenaline OD songs, you know, a couple of them. And yeah, Adrenaline OD, Wacky Hijinks, that was another big influence on us, on me, and, you know, still is, again, one of my favorite all-time things. And then followed by the first couple Agnostic Front, you know, like United Blood and the EP. And I remember there was Target home video, and Target released an Agnostic Front live, like whatever, one camera pro shot, and from New York, filmed in New York. And I remember going, wow, it's all skinheads. It's nothing but skinheads. And I was like, holy shit, man. I'm like, and I was like kind of scared. I'm like, damn, these guys are fucking brutal, man. Look at this fucking, the whole band of skinheads. Everyone in the crowd is a skinhead. I was like, holy shit. And, you know, listen to the recordings, and it grew. At first I was like, this is kind of primitive. It's kind of basic and primitive, but you know, it grew on me quick. You know, I really started to really like it a lot, and just you know, it grew on me, and you know, I noticed they did have their own sound, and I think I liked that it was so primitive, and they were really, you know, and in that Target home video, I'll never forget, Vinny Stigma is being interviewed, and he goes, you know, yo, we don't come from no jacuzzi. We take our shit from the streets. We don't come from no jacuzzi. And I was like, wow, holy shit. And I'm like, these guys are fucking badass, man. I'm like, this guy's fucking cool, you know, and just that New York, yo, New York hardcore, you know. I was like, wow, holy shit, this is fucking cool. And, you know, that was a part of it too. I gravitated towards, and of course, on Ultimate Revenge, you know, Jeff Hanneman had the Agnostic Front shirt. So I'm like, Jeff Hanneman likes it, I like it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how we talk about that. When back then, you used to see the band's shirts, and you would go look for those bands. You would read liner notes, which I don't even know if liner notes are a thing.
And you know what? Honestly, yeah, seeing Jeff Hanneman's shirt, that's what led us to Agnostic Front. You know, we're like, what the fuck is this? You know, and same with DRI. You know, same thing. But
Roger
so
Merritt
that was,
had
you know.
Roger Merritt definitely had one of the most unique voices I heard back then, because, you know, it's one thing to hear people doing punk, like even DRI, you know, he was kind of different, but Roger Merritt, you know, he has almost like that obituary kind of vocal without the death metal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Next song,
very original.
Yeah, man. I mean, I would listen to him going, how do you do that with your voice? He's,
yeah.
You know, and somebody asked him that, and he's like, what are you talking about? It's just my voice. But when you hear him talk, he has that New York accent, and like Vinny really has a fucking New York accent. I mean, he's really the antithesis of New York City. But to hear the dude sing,
he's the guy.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, no, 100%. Roger has such an original voice, and like, you know, it was great. You know, and of course, yeah, you know, Kurt from DRI, another original voice. You know, and like, I love them both. But I still do. I like Agnostic Front better. I've always liked them better than DRI for some reason. But I love DRI too. Don't get me wrong. But I've always kind of liked Agnostic Front a little more. And finally, my number 5 would be Accused, maddest stories ever told. That's just, and I actually listened to it yesterday, and man, I'm like, man, this holds up. This is just still so fucking great, and and they do that cover of that. I'd like to change the world, but I don't know what to do.
Awesome, isn't it? That's a great cover,
and his
too.
voice, he's like, I'd like to change the world. And it's like, wow.
Blaine is that's another guy. There's only a few bands that had singers that did things that were so unique, like Blaine, and then the Cryptic Slaughter. Same thing.
Cryptic Slaughter.
Cryptic Slaughter.
Cook,
Fuck
right?
yeah.
Wasn't that his name? What was his name in Cryptic Slaughter? What was the singer's name from Cryptic Slaughter? It was
Oh, that's a tough one, man. That's a lot of bong hits ago.
I knew it too. Yeah, I knew it too. I knew it. It's on the top of my head because I got Blaine in my head. But yeah, those guys had vocals that were so unique that it drew you because the music always were very bass guitar oriented with shredding guitars and that drum beat that just nobody was playing. And then you add in the vocals, and you had some of the best music. I didn't consider it hardcore. I considered it like just ripping, metal. That's almost what it was, is metal. Not heavy metal, not death metal, just metal.
Yeah. Cryptic Slaughter especially, they were like, I didn't think of them as punk, but they had elements of punk, and they weren't really like metal, but they had elements of metal. But it was, it was very unique, man. Cryptic Slaughter is definitely very unique, as well as there was that Wehrmacht. Wehrmacht was another one. Oh man, when I heard Shark Attack and the demo tape before Shark Attack, the Beer Mock demo. Oh my God, I was like, wow, fucking Shark Attack is one of my favorite things in life.
And I always wonder when you get older, it's like now it's harder to find, like, back then you would find all these bands. Now I don't know if it's like it's hard. I hear so many bands, and I'm like, everyone sounds like a lot of bands sound the same, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's all tough.
Fucking well. Yeah, I don't want to be too critical, but yeah, right. It all fucking sucks.
Like that distinctive.
What were we saying? Everybody's logo is unreadable. And the bands all sound the same.
Yeah, and the fucking production is all the same. Like it all sounds like the same studio.
Like, I miss the mistakes. Like, when I listen to Slaughter in the Vatican from Exoder, I hear the drumsticks drop on the recording. I love that shit. Like, I don't know, like, leave that stuff in. Now everything is so fucking perfect, It's so,
sucks. So sterile. It's so sterile.
Yeah. And, you mentioned the Ultimate Revenge, right? So you guys did the Ultimate Revenge second leg of the tour, right? With Death, Dark Age.
We did the Florida. We just did all the Florida dates.
Florida shows. So Chuck stayed with you, right? And I know you performed with them.
Yeah. The Ultimate Revenge was in '89. The Florida leg was in '89, and Chuck stayed at my house in like October of '86. So yeah, I had known Chuck for a few years before that. But yeah, Chuck, he came with these two guys, Mark and John, who had a fanzine called Guillotine, out of the Orlando area, and we had gotten the Death demos through tape trading, and we were covering Infernal Death in like '85, and the demo came out, and we were covering a demo song like within months of it coming out. That's how much we loved it. I loved it even more than I think my bandmates at the time. And then Chuck heard about us doing a Death cover, and we had played in May of '85 at the Rocky Point show in Tampa with Morbid Angel and Massacre, and we had Cam come on stage and sing Infernal Death with us there. And then 5 months later, Chuck came and stayed at my house in Gainesville, and we played with COC. We opened for COC at the VFW, and we had Chuck come up and do Infernal Death with us there as well. So yeah, but yeah, we knew, I was in touch with Chuck, since, probably '86.
What's your favorite Death album? Or is that like, for myself, I like the early albums. I like Scream Bloody Gore, that period of time, Spiritual Healing. I don't know, what was your period of time with Death, or did you like it all?
I'm from the fucking ancient school, and for me, the Reign of Terror and Infernal Death demos, those are the best things that Death ever did. And when I heard Scream Bloody Gore, I'm like, this is good, but it's a little downhill.
Demos.
So,
okay.
and you know, Leprosy was still good. And I heard Spiritual Healing, and I'm like, yeah, I won't be buying any more albums of this band. After that, I was like, yeah, I'm not. It's not really, you know, it's not deathly anymore. It's kind of a little
weird.
more melodic.
When you hear the demos, like the demos in the 80s and the early 90s, there was a big difference when a band would get signed from the demos. Like sometimes you would hear like the demos, you would just appreciate more. Like that's one thing I do like now, I guess, is when they re-release some albums and they throw the demos on the back end of them and stuff. You know, I mean, because a lot of those bands, like there was a band, like there was just bands that you would get these tapes. Like I said, when I first, the Hellwitch tapes and stuff, like the tape trading thing, that was when I was a kid, that was the thing. Like that's, you would buy these magazines, and even in the back of the magazines, there would be the address. Like my name's Bob from West Virginia, and I like these bands. And you would contact these people, and this is just the way it went. You know, I mean,
Pen Pals, the Pen Pals,
the fucking Pen Pals.
Fuck yeah.
So 90, right? You guys put out your one and only record with Wild Rags. And that was their first album you did at Morrisound. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, did it with Scott Burns. And and it was funny. I was just mentioning this not long ago to somebody that at that point I called Morrisound because, you know, we were signed to Wild Rags, and we knew, you know, at that point everyone knew the only way to be assured of getting a good metal sound was to go to Morrisound. Like, if you went somewhere else, you were gambling that you may not get a, you know, good production. You may get a shitty sound. And I was like, no. I'm like, we'll pay the money. We need to go to Morrisound. And I called Morrisound, and at that time, it hadn't really blown up yet. So I said, so who will be engineering with us for our album? And he says, oh, well, you know, Jim Morris and Tom Morris and Scott are here. And he's like, whoever you want. And so I said, well, yeah, I'd like, you know, if Scott could work with us, that'd be great. And he said, no problem, I'll pencil him in for you. And so at that time, you didn't even have to get Scott to be your producer. You could just say, oh, you know, when we go record, we want him running the board for us.
Which is the same,
for like the same price. You know, it wasn't like you didn't have to pay extra to get Scott Burns. He just came with your, you know, $100 an hour studio time. So yeah, we were very, very fucking lucky, man. We recorded and it was done with Scott Burns. And yeah, I mean, he did help produce, you know, he produced.
And then you guys parted ways with that label, Wild Rags, which they had Angel Kill on there, Blood, they had Nuclear Death. I mean, it was
Blood Come with the Slayer brothers.
Blood Come, exactly, the two Slayer brothers.
And Blasphemy, don't forget Blasphemy was on there.
And Patego was on there. There was, you know, it was a
lot
but so you guys parted ways with them. Was that just so you guys after that? Where did you guys go after that for the next release?
Well,
you guys did a bunch
it was
of
interesting because, well, you know, it was interesting because, you know, as everyone kind of knows, Wild Rags was a fucking ripoff, and you know there was a whole Enrique from Sadistic Intent. He did a whole flyer with, you know, quotes from like 20 people in the underground scene, all who had been ripped off by Wild Rags. And we spread that, like he sent me a copy and I copied it and would do my letters on the back of that. And, you know, and then it got back to Wild Rags. And Wild Rags, you know, Richard C., the ripoff, he's like, oh, I see you're talking shit about me and telling people I'm a ripoff. And I'm like, well, it's been like 9 months. You were supposed to give us money after 6 months. We never got any money. You never gave us anything. Except, you know, we got our initial copies of the album and the CD and the cassette. We did get those, but, you know, there was supposed to be royalties and, you know, and nothing. Never got a penny from them. So he's like, well, yeah, you guys can just, you know, go on your way. You're off the label. I'm not working with you anymore. And at that point, we had already recorded the Terror Symmetry EP in '91, a year after the first album, again at Morrisound. And that was on Wild Rags. That was for Wild Rags. So we recorded, and then they billed Wild Rags, And Wild Rags said, no, we're not paying. Hellwitch is not on our label, and we're not paying. And so Morrisound got stuck with the bill for that. And then along came Lethal Records from Austria, who was even more of a fucking ripoff than Wild Rags. I mean, yeah, we've, dealt with being ripped off almost at every deal was almost a ripoff. But this guy in Austria, Michael Peesh, he assigned us to Lethal Records. He paid the tab at Morrisound, got the Terror Symmetry EP, and he put that out. And we never even got a copy of the CD. Like, he put it out and just kept all the money, kept everything. I got copies of it by buying them from a record store in Japan, and I paid like $15 a CD just so I could have a copy. Yeah, it was fucking bad. That dude was the worst of the worst. And yeah, so then, after that, it was, I don't know. That was about it for that period of time anyway.
Yeah, that's, and you guys, when you deal with those labels, like, I know me and Ed personally have dealt with that shit too, where we've actually put out an album once and we didn't get it for a year after it came out. I had to actually buy it off of Amazon. So yeah, we've been there for that bullshit,
It happened. Yeah, I know. I've heard that too. I mean, even, I'm not going to give names of bands, but bands that were on Roadrunner. Woo! Roadrunner took them to the fucking cleaners.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you also played bass for Meat Locker. Was that just for live gigs?
You know about that. Wow, you know about that, huh?
Yeah, that was like, what, the 90s? What, 90 to 94?
It was like 94, 95. And how it's interesting. Back in Gainesville, I don't know if you probably don't know this, but late 88, mid to late 88, right before I relocated back to South Florida from Gainesville, I, graduated from college and was ready to move back home. There was a local punk band called the Raging Puss Bags, and they needed a bass player in Gainesville. And Hellwitch was doing some things, but I saw them and people were going ape shit, and they were blowing up. And I'm like, hey, I play bass. They were playing as a 3-piece with guitar, drums, and a singer. And so, I talked to them and I'm like, well, I can play bass. And they're like, oh yeah. And I joined the Raging Puss Bags, and we played a few good shows. We played with like Youth of Today, and we been Sick of It All. Well, no, Meat Locker we played with Sick of It All, but played a couple good shows with Raging Puss Bags, and then they broke up. Like, they were very dysfunctional fucking punk rockers, and that just imploded. It was nothing to do with me. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, you're broken up. I guess that's the end of that. And the singer of the Raging Puss Bags was the singer of Meat Locker. And I ran into him in 94, and he's like, oh, we're on Progress Records from Holland or whatever. And that was a decent label at the time. And he said, yeah, we're going to be doing a European tour, and we're going to be recording a full length, and we need a bass player. And he's like, I remember you kicked ass in the Raging Puss Bags on bass. And I'm like, yeah, man. I'm like, fucking Meat Locker sounds great. I'm in. And so, yeah, I joined Meat Locker under the premise that we were going to do a European tour, and we're recording a new full length. And then that broke up. They broke up.
See, that's yeah. So you guys, you've taken over writing most of the music now, right? In Hellwitch, you've pretty much. So I know there was a period of time, right, where it was a band F. Now you're pretty much doing most of the writing on your own now.
Yeah, well, the last album, Omnipotent Convocation, which came out in 2009, we thanks, man, I appreciate that, Tony. But we kind of subconsciously went for a more, I don't want to say mainstream, but less oddball sounding, more kind of a flowing, going, hitting you, and just kind of straightforward, more of a straightforward sound. And we had all collaborated, like the four of us had written almost all the songs together. And, that came out on Extreme Music from Spain, didn't really do too well. And then, think the lineup changed, and Joe Witch left, and our bass player Craig, is married with children. He left, And during that period, I just kind of took it upon myself to try to write some songs, whatever, just write songs myself. And it came to a point where we had enough songs for another album. And most of these were ones, I had written. There were a couple that, were written by, with Craig and Joe back in like the 90s and early 2000s. And we, had these songs for the new album. And yeah, it just turned out that, I had written most of the stuff for the new album. And so far it seems like people might be more responsive to this album than the last album. But, we'll see how things pan out. But, at this point, the rest of the band is like, well, yeah, these songs are really fucking good and you wrote them, so just keep doing it. Keep going with that if you want to do it. And I'm like, I'll have at it if I, if I need help or, whatever, we'll get it together. So at this point, yeah, I've kind of taken the reins for most of the writing, the music writing. And, yeah, we're going to go in with that for now and see what happens.
Now, lyrically, what do you usually like? I know this is you probably get asked this a million times, but what do you pull from lyrically? Are you like, is it movies? Is it just everyday events, or just a mix of shit?
Yeah, it's just about things that hopefully other bands have not done. I try to always keep it. Hellwitch is all about being original and doing things that no one has heard or read, before us. And so, I cover topics maybe that have heard, death and destruction and generally speaking. But I try to go into take it and pick out aspects that haven't been written about by other bands and, write about specific things that haven't been covered before. Like, on the new album, for instance, there's a song Solipsistic Immortality, which is the philosophy of solipsism, which I did a little bit of research on, and found that it was pretty cool. And it was kind of a thing where, like, if you don't see it happening, how do you really know it is happening? Your reality is kind of what you see around you in this moment, is real, but, you kind of don't 100% know that what's going on outside, is that all really there right now, or is it not? And I just thought that was kind of a odd topic to cover, and I came up with a theme of like, well, really, it's you could kind of be an immortal. You may not ever die if you really see things forever or see things for a certain period of time, and you'd have to read the lyrics to really get what I'm saying. I'm not explaining it that well at all, but and then there's songs like Anthropophagy, which is cannibalism, which in a way, though, again, if you read it, it's a pretty specific form of cannibalism where neighbors are feeding neighbors to neighbors and things like that, where it's not really just straight up cannibalism, it's something odd. And then there's Epical Cessation, which is this is true. All the girls I dated from 89 to 2005 are all dead. And,
It's crazy when you start getting older.
I don't take credit for that, but it's a fact. All of them are dead now. And so I thought, maybe I indirectly had something to do with what happened, why they all met their fate. So, wrote a song about that, about all the dead females I left in my wake. Indirectly, of course, but so yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't put that in my bio.
Yeah,
but yeah,
you pulled out some old songs too, right? You pulled out, like, I know the Hellwitch was a partially written tune that you didn't finish.
Yeah, and then there's like Hellwitch, which is like that was written during my height of worshiping Slayer, and it's kind of just a song about a like a ghoul, like a demon, like a thing that you really don't see, but it's there, and it goes around and kills and causes destruction and mayhem, and And yeah, it's about the Hellwitch, you know, who really nobody knows what it is or where it came from. We just know what it does, that it kills and mutilates and feeds and you know, just brings mayhem to the planet. So yeah, that was one that, you know, I did a cassette deck demo, like I was talking about the Nosferatu demo. The song Hellwitch was the same thing, but I did that alone in my bedroom when I moved back to Hollywood. Or no, actually, I was on break from college at my parents in Hollywood, and I had the 2 cassette decks, and I did a demo with it was 2 guitars and vocals, you know, and solos, and it was halfway done, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, yeah, this kind of sucks, you know. I'm like, this song is not really gonna go anywhere, and so I scrapped it. And then when we did our 30th anniversary box set, 10 LP box set that came out on Iron Bonehead Records, I put that recording in the box set because it had never been released. I don't even think I tape traded that. And, you know, I was listening to the file as I was converting it to a wave, you know, to be put on vinyl. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, this isn't that bad. You know, I'm like, in 2016, I'm like, this is, you know, it's kind of a cool song. Maybe it has potential. So I brought it back to life. I reworked it a little bit, added like 2 more parts to it, and made it what you hear on the album now. So that was, you know, I'm really happy I brought that back. And then, of course, added the orchestral intro, which is, you know, Sorceress Imminence. And I thought that was really a good way to lead into like an epic song like Hellwitch. And,
Torture Chamber.
you know, and then of course, huh?
Torture Chamber was on there.
Yeah,
also.
brought back Torture Chamber. Yeah, and again too, Torture Chamber, it had undergone some changes, and it was always meant to have like this, you know, horror themed intro that it has now. But in, you know, '86, we, you know, couldn't really. We went to this studio called Multitrack Studios in Tampa to record that, and you know, we didn't know how to come up with like an intro with sound effects. Like that was not going to happen first time in the studio. And then did it again on the '94 demo, which was done in like a warehouse on a cassette 4-track, cassette 8-track, and 8-track, you know, Tascam 8-track studio warehouse. And yeah, again, in '94 didn't have the resources to put together some kind of horror sound effect intro for that. So again, did the song as you hear it on that demo, and finally now had the resources and the budget to come up with an intro, you know, for Torture Chamber, and then, you know, do some, you know, effects during the middle of the song. And you know, kind of, this is the way has kind of meant to be heard since at least '94. This is the, you know, the final version.
Nice. And you mentioned
the new record definitely has some songs. I thought Carcass had some songs that were hard to say. You've definitely, there's a couple. I'm like, what is this? I was telling Tony, we were just talking. I'm like, dude, is this a word? I started looking at it, and I'm like, I'm trying to pronounce it, and I'm pretty good with the English language. And I'm like, megalopoptic. I'm like, what the heck? And then I start going, man, all these words. But when you listen to the songs are killer, and the lyrics are killer. And it's like,
thank you, Ed.
I don't care if I can't pronounce it. It's killer. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, Ed. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that, definitely. And yeah, I mean, you know, I like to make up my own words, sometimes based on an existing word, and then I'll modify it to meet my specific thought, you know. And sometimes I'll just, like, mortarivial dissemination, like that's just out of nowhere. I just came up with that super fucking high, and just kind of came up with that, you know. So I mean, some words are totally made up. Huh?
That's what makes it so unique, though.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, you know, I'm very committed to keeping Hellwitch as something that doesn't sound like other bands. We will not sound like other bands. I mean, out of every 10 riffs I come up with, I'll keep maybe 2 or 3, and the other 7 I'll go back and go, it's not good enough, or it sounds like something I've heard, so I can't use it. It sounds like somebody else cannot use it.
Yeah,
And that's the kind of
don't you take a riff, like when you write your riffs, what do you do? Like, I think I read something or heard something where you like put the riffs to the side for a while and make sure you don't fucking hate them a couple weeks later or some shit like that.
Yeah, because that, I mean, in the, as songwriters, you guys probably know this as well, but, when you come up with something, you kind of will think like, man, this is cool, oh, fuck, I just came up with this is cool. But the true test is you let it sit, you come back to it like 5-6 days later, is it still that cool, or is it just kind of, it's okay? And I more often than not,
I think he froze.
Uh-oh.
He'll probably be back with us. I think he froze on the Riverside. So yeah, so far we're talking to Pat. It's a great interview. I think he's frozen right now.
Yeah, he's epic, man.
We'll see if he makes it back to us.
I really like hearing these old stories because it reminds me of when we were talking about the Sunset Club and the early days at the Brass Mug and the Ritz, because here's a guy that literally lived that, and actually he goes a little further back than I go, because I think he's a little older than I am. So, and he was in the punk scene in Gainesville, which was completely different than the punk scene in Orlando, which was way different than the one in Tampa. So, I mean, you've got a triangle. If you think about, like, if you drew a triangle of Florida, you had 3 different types of genres that literally all molded into becoming the same thing. So
yeah, I mean, it's so much history.
And Hellwitch, Hellwitch is definitely one of those bands. Like I said, when I was getting ready to tell him when we saw him in 2014, I think it was 2013. Whenever we played in Miami with Obituary, I was just like, fuck, man, these guys are, when you get on stage, and this, we've done this a million times. Usually we're the ones opening because we're playing on the big shows and we open, which is great because we get done and we're done. But like even Monstrosity Massacre, 70,000 Tons, when you go on that stage after, imagine having to play after Carcass or Venom, at 2:00 in the morning, and you're like, we have to go on after Venom. That would suck, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, So, but the Cruise is a revolving door of bands, so that's just how it goes all day. There's always going to be a band that's just up in the level to the next one. But when they played, I was thinking, "Fuck, man, we got to play after that." So
yeah, and I think the first time I remember Hellwitch was at G. Willikers in New Jersey. Which I don't know.
My phone just said it was overheating and it was shut off. It like went into emergency shut off mode because it said the phone was overheating.
Oh shit. Well, Pat's back with us. We were just talking about you.
Yeah.
I was saying
Wow.
Talking about some Hellwitch.
Yeah, I was actually I was telling Tony about when we played with you in Miami with Obituary. It was Obituary, Massacre, Hellwitch, and I told him we had to go back to the hotel to get gear, and I'm like, dude, we got to get back, man, because I was like, I wanted to see you guys because it had been a long time. And I remember we got back, and I thought you guys were done because the lights had just came on, and I was like, oh my god! And then the lights dropped, and then you guys came on, and I was like, fuck yes! And you guys, and I was like telling Tony, I'm like, man, it sucks when you watch a band and go, fuck, we got to play after that. And that's, it was a killer show. You guys crushed. And
Thank you.
And,
yeah, I remember that very well, seeing you with Massacre, and I was like, oh shit, Massacre has a different singer. I'm like, what's this gonna be like? And I was like, this is good. I'm like, this guy does it. This guy's doing it. He's doing it. It's good.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I remember that, man. I remember that. I was like, oh, I don't know. How can it really be Massacre without Cam Lee? And, I was like, oh, this will work. I'm like, Rick was tearing it up. Rick was doing a good job.
What do you think about that, actually? Pat, if your phone's going to die, let us know, too. I don't want your phone to burn up on you.
It's all charged up now, and I've moved to another part of the room where I had it resting on, like, my laptop, and I think that might have been part of the problem, and the laptop is on, so... But, yeah, now I've got it on my little tripod here, and I think it's a little better. I think it's going to do a little better.
Now, what do you think these days? Like, I always wonder, because every band now, like, when we grew up, you had the original members. Like, bands once a band lost a member, it was a big deal. Now, it's kind of like, anybody could be replaced, it almost feels like, right? And in a week's time period. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, what's your personal opinion? I mean, obviously it has to be like that when people pass away and stuff, but it just seems like it's just the way now. Your favorite band has one guy in it, maybe.
It's interesting because, I like Napalm Death, but it's no original members, hasn't been for a long time. And that definitely bothers me, like I'm not really down with that. And on that same note, I'm reading an interview with Tom Warrior, on Blabbermouth, like 2 days ago, and he says, he's like, we will never perform as Celtic Frost because Martin Ain was an integral part of the band, and he's gone. So he's like, we will never perform as Celtic Frost. And I was like, there you go, a man of honor who won't desecrate the name, with whatever.
I was just telling my daughter because Led Zeppelin came on, and she's like, I said, you see this guy right here? This guy was offered hundreds of millions of dollars to go play Led Zeppelin again. And because there's no John Bonham, even though his kid's close enough, he said, I don't want to do it because it's not Led Zeppelin. And I'm like, here's a guy that's turning down more money than God. And
yeah.
But you gotta appreciate why. And I appreciate that with Tom. I saw them at the Maryland Death Fest. He played with Triumphs of Death and Triptychon, and it was very strange to hear those songs played with that lineup and the way they were doing it. But it's still, because he slowed down some of the songs, some of them he played completely different. I was just like, but when I was leaving, I was like, you know what? That shit worked. That was killer. Because it's Tom Warrior.
Yeah.
And he's not doing it as Celtic Frost.
Well, and that brings up another thing, Ed. You bring up Robert Plant, like, he doesn't want to do it for the money because he can't sing like that. And that's another big problem now, right, with these bands, because so many bands that we say, let's go to 80s, right? A lot of bands are using tracks now. A lot of bands are faking it. And I think it sucks. I mean, I'm I grew up loving Kiss. I was gonna ask you that, Pat.
Yeah.
Makeup or no makeup? Makeup days, right? By far, I would think.
Well, I mean, the one of the first bands that got me into heavy music was Kiss. So I mean, Kiss with the makeup was all I grew up knowing. And when they took the makeup off, I was like, well, now it's just some band. I'm like, it's just some band. The music sucks, and they're just some whatever dudes, just some dudes playing songs.
Are these even the same dudes without the makeup? Prove it.
Yeah. It killed it. It killed it.
Yeah, when Vinnie Vincent came, it was a whole different thing. But now you have people. To me, it's like I would rather see a band fuck up. I would rather see you go up there and just play, because why? You can just listen to a record instead of going and paying money to go see these bands who are faking it. And I have a feeling it's going to get worse and worse as we go on, because it's just becoming a thing now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it was interesting. Like when we were recording the new album, there were certain little things wrong. And I would say, hey, it's the human element. Let it go. It's fine. I'm like, oh, that's not exact. I'm like, it's the human element. It's fine. I'm like, we're not a machine. This isn't a fucking artificially created, work of art. This is done by people who are fallible. And that's it. The album, if it has a mistake, that's what it is. That's that's a person.
100%.
It's a fucking person playing it. That's what you get.
And it's something you hear and you appreciate.
Yeah, I
Fear
do.
Factory, like when I hear Fear Factory, and I love Dino, and Dino's a great guy, but when you hear that, you know that shit's been micromanaged to the fucking furthest, as far as you could micromanage that through a studio. And again, it's cool, but that takes away the absolute human element, like you said. It takes away every aspect of going in and going in the studio and cutting it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah. And I mean, I not to keep going on about it, but I mean, I understand if something's a mistake where, it's fucked up, that's something else. But if it's a little micro, whatever, that there's a little weird noise there. Fuck that, like, oh, I didn't bend the guitar string exactly enough on the end of the solo. Fuck that. It's fine, dude. That's who you are. It's fine. And so, yeah, I don't, the backing tracks thing and all that bullshit, that's just really rough. And I just, I sometimes say I'm glad I'm alive in the age I am now and not being born now, because if you're being born now, your musical experience is going to be pretty shitty for the rest of your life.
And I feel bad for artists. I feel bad for artists now because you got AI. I mean, pretty soon, I can't imagine that these young bands are going to pay for artwork. I mean, I think they're just going to eventually it's going to become like these guys, the artists that we love, because I love art. Album artwork to me is like a huge fucking deal.
Yeah.
And now they're making it's like AI that, and it's just. I mean, what's next? I don't know. I mean, we've already seen the extinction of physical product, which sucks. I mean, we were talking about
that. At practice a couple weeks ago, me and Brian, our drummer, I said, oh, don't worry about it. I go, in a few years, AI fucking death metal bands will just put all of us out of business.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucking scary, isn't it? It's like
you won't even need people to create. The most popular death metal will be a fucking an AI thing created by AI.
And they'll get somebody to do the vocals too. I mean, somebody will come up and
easily
the vocals. That's what we were talking about with Julian. I said, man, I do these screams that are 30 seconds long. Do you think after a while, when you do 30 shows in a row on tour, that gets a little old. I'll put a backing track on. Let's go ahead and play the game. Fuck it. Just give me the money anyway, right? Fuck it.
I mean, but it's bad. Yeah. You see bands like singing and stepping away from the microphone, and they're still singing, or it's just crazy, man. I mean, I don't know. It's a whole different world now, and it's hard to you don't want to sound like the old grumpy bastard and be like, this sucks, but man, it's like I have kids that tell me, oh, you want our CD? We have digital copies only. Like, to me, that's fucking lame. I'm like, digital copies only? I'm like, what's that? I'm like, I know what it is, but I mean.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I just, did a post on Instagram yesterday of a print fanzine that just came out that we're in called Metal Execution. And I said, we're honored to be in a real print fanzine premiere issue, and, hats off to people that do physical media and physical copies of magazines and, keep the spirit alive. And I wrote, write, do snail mail, spread the ads, trade tapes.
We used to, do you remember Rivet Rag at all?
Pardon?
Did you remember the Rivet Rag at all? The Florida, it was we did it for 5 years. It was a print magazine. This guy, Jack Radinsky, put it out in Tampa. It was a heavy metal print. And man, he lost so much money putting it out, but he loved it. Yeah, he loved doing it. And I have to say, man, it was the print magazines now, I think, are pretty much, I mean, there is some, like you said, I know there's a lot more in Europe, I think, than the States, probably. Because it's like if someone gives you a download, it's like so much, it's like less attractive than a physical album. Like even a zine online, if you're like looking at a magazine online, it's just not the same. I like the pages, and so I guess,
I mean, okay, here we go. To put it in perspective, our drummer, who's been in the band since he was 18, he's now 26, and he's always been a collector of physical media. And he says what we're saying now. And, some people say, oh, well, he's an old soul. you know? And I'm like, well, whatever. I'm like, he's young and he agrees that having physical copies is the way to go. And he loves to collect and he loves to, you know, have things you can hold and look at a booklet and hold the CD and look at the artwork and, you know, have a 12-inch album where you see a big, you know, big version of the artwork and all that shit. So, you know, there are some youthful people out there who still believe in that, you know. So what I'm getting at is I don't think it's a factor of us getting old. I think it's just, you know, a way of thinking that, you know, the youth of America is programmed to, you know, that's how they were raised, you know, raised in the internet age. They're kind of at a disadvantage, in my opinion.
And I think we are
what do you
fortunate
do?
in that.
What do you do when you're on tour? You're going to sell little pieces of paper with your digital download? I mean, what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? I mean, what are you supposed to do? Here's a T-shirt, a piece of paper for $5 extra for a digital download of our record. I mean, nobody wants that, and nobody's going to do that. Otherwise, you're not making any money. If you don't have physical product on the road, you're not making money, because
It's
you know
true.
the shows, most shows, especially if you're an opening band, you're not getting paid. So you better have something to, you know, support your economy while you're out there, or you're going to be starving.
100%. And I mean, I do a thing where I sell like a couple of our releases online, and, you know, I'll put, I wrote, oh, you know, I'll autograph it. If you buy it, I'll autograph it. And yeah, you can't get that with a digital download, you know? So it's like, there's things like that, you know? And I mean, our one pressing of Syzygial Miscreancy, there was another cover art done in like, I don't know, I think in the early 2000s, and I released a pressing of Syzygial Miscreancy with the reversible cover. You could flip the CD cover, you know, thing around, and you could have the newer cover or the original cover, and you don't get that with a digital download.
No, that's killer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I see this. I see behind you now. I was talking about it earlier. I know you have a huge, like, you had a site, right? Even a huge fucking concert collection of like just old shows, and, you know, I mean, how many? Like, I'm sure you don't know exactly, probably, but what would you
pretty
estimate?
close. Well, first of all, it's Darkest Soul Promotions, and if you Google it, the link comes right up, because it's not really, I don't have a domain for it. I have it at like a free hosting site. But yeah, if you Google Darkest Soul Promotions, my 12,000 plus video collection site comes up. You know, you can find it that way. I got into the, you know, I was into cassette trading in like 81, and then by 84, we had you know, one of my friends had a videotape with the Venom promos for like Witching Hour and you know, another song, and we saw that and we were like, holy shit, that's what Venom looks like playing songs, like, holy shit. And that was it. I'm like, man, we need to, fuck this audio tape shit. We need to get videos going and, you know, start collecting videos so we can watch and see all these bands that we may probably never going to see live. We can at least see what it's like. And so I pretty much abandoned cassette trading and switched over to video trading. And there weren't a lot of guys doing it, and it was expensive. And my first VCR I bought in 84. It was a used RCA VCR, and it was like $350 back then for a used
back then,
one.
that's like fucking big deal.
Oh, it was a chunk of change, yeah. But I was in, you know. I'm like, and my other buddy, he bought one so we could hook them together and make copies so we could start trading. And yeah, I got into it then, and I stuck with it, and I still do it some, but of course now everyone's filming with their cell phone and putting it on YouTube, and I have to say YouTube really kind of killed it, because YouTube, you know, everyone puts things on YouTube so everyone can see it, but I have to say probably half or at least a third of my collection is not on YouTube. I have, you know, a lot of things that just never made it to YouTube, and things that people never traded to get from me or never purchased from me. And so I still have a lot of rare shit, but what you see here is videotape number 0 to like 0 to 900, and the other half 900 to 1000, or what is it? No, 2050 is out in my living room area. So I have 2000 VHS tapes, and then around the time I got to 2000 VHS tapes, that was around 2002, and DVD-R became feasible, and guys started trading DVDs, and so I'm up to like there we go. There's some of them right there.
Wow, that's a hell
But
of a collection.
I'm up to like 1900 DVD-Rs of concert videos. So yeah, 2000 something VHS tapes and like 1900 DVD-Rs. And I went through it once. I didn't count everything one by one, but I kind of, extrapolated how many videos do I really have? And I came up with like, it's probably not 13,000, but it's more than 12,000. And so, and I still, I still sell them. I still trade with a couple guys overseas who, film shows. And I still film shows here and there with, a digital video camera. And man, I still love it. I don't watch them that much, these days. I mean, I got more into movies. Like at some point around 2008, I really got into collecting movies and Blu-rays. And
what's your genre? Like, what's your sci-fi, horror?
I'd say sci-fi is my favorite. Horror's good. I like 70s crime, like 70s like French Connection and like the 7-Ups and, brutal stuff like that. Those are probably my favorites. I actually,
give us a little list of if you would recommend, like, say, 5 movies that you would take with you to the grave, I guess you'd say.
Okay. Well, first of all, I mean, I saw Alien in the theater when it came out, and it fucked me up pretty good. I was really fucked up after I saw Alien in the theater. So that's still my favorite movie of all time. Like, I still watch that and have that, my young teenage years of being really, came out of the theater feeling bad. I'm like, man, what the fuck? What was that? That was fucked up. And Alien is definitely my favorite. And then again, saw The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing in the theater when that came out. And yeah, that's probably my second favorite. And I still watch that now. I watched it maybe a month ago, and it holds up, and the characters are great. The lines are great. It's just, yeah, man, it's a timeless classic. And then there was a movie I saw in high school, late in high school, from '81 called The Beast Within. And I
wrote a song about something around that and Massacre. That's what it was called, The Beast Within. Remember?
Oh shit!
Yeah.
About that movie?
It was something of, that's the premise around.
Okay.
That kind of that subject matter.
Oh, cool. Yeah, man. The Beast Within is probably my third favorite movie, and I watch that all the time. Our live intro is the closing credits of The Beast Within. That music that plays during that is our intro for when we play live. So I love Beast Within. That just really sticks with me in a really brutal way, and it just has a really old school horror feel to it, and it's got L.Q. Jones and all these kind of 70s guys who were in like the Burt Reynolds movies, and really gritty movies, gritty actors, and there's like 5 of them in The Beast Within, and really love that. And then like I said, crime, 70s crime, like the 7-Ups with Roy Scheider. That's in my top 5. That's a really great crime movie with an infamous scene where a car crashes into the end of an 18-wheeler trailer. And this was before they had the support bar underneath the back of an 18-wheeler trailer where the car could go under the trailer. and it peeled the whole top of the car off. And they did the real stunt with a guy driving the car like 80 miles an hour into a tractor trailer and getting the whole top of the car peeled off and, coming to a stop and just crashing into it. And I always thought that was cool. When I was younger, I saw it and I was like, wow, that's the coolest car crash thing I've ever seen. And yeah, I just love that movie. And probably both French Connection movies. I love watching those. And, just that. Anything 70s New York City, I fucking love, man, And even like Maniac with Joe Spinell, Maniac with Joe Spinell, that's another one filmed in New York City in, like 80 or whatever, and love that. Love, Scanners, fucking Scanners was incredible. That was incredible.
And a lot of those movies you mentioned, it's like they stand the test of time, right? You could put them on like movies like Jaws and Aliens and shit like that. It's like you can put them on and they're better than what you see today, because I'm not really big into remakes and all that shit. Like there's just too much like originality's kind of gone with movies because they remake everything now. I heard they're going to remake Clockwork Orange. I was like, why would you ever remake Clockwork Orange? Like,
it's really bad. Yeah, it's really getting bad. I have to say though, when I saw The Thing, I guess it's the Thing prequel. I at first was thinking, whatever. And after watching that a couple times,
it was killer, man. I really, I know it was a little more CGI, but man, they really hit it and kind of kept the premise with the fucking wolves running at the end and the guy chasing them in the helicopter. It stayed to the trilogy. Yeah, that was a great movie.
I was going to say that's one of the few things I can cite as like they did, a movie now about something old and it was fucking good. It was well written, good lines, good acting.
They did that with Prometheus. They kind of went back and told how the aliens kind of were made and how they became. So it kind of. There's a couple that have been done, but they were prequels. They weren't remakes. You know what I mean? They didn't reinvent the wheel. So, yeah, for sure.
Yes, Ed, I agree with yours taking the words right out of my mouth, man. Prometheus is incredible, and it was classic, and it was well done, and, 100%, man. There's still a few remakes now and then that are, or whatever, that are still, that are good, but, the majority of them, not so much,
Yeah, the CGI kills it for me, right? It's a lot of that. Like some of it just kind of, I don't know. I like the old Evil Dead, like that kind of, like the old original. Like I like the old blood and makeup from those days just so much. It was just,
practical effects. Practical effects.
Here's a movie that, like Escape from New York. I mean, it was so raw. But when they tried to do Escape from LA, when they first came out with some CGI stuff, you ruined it because Kurt Russell, The Thing, Escape from New York, anything Kurt Russell played in those sci-fi movies, he was great. But Escape from LA was fucking dog shit. No offense.
It was downhill, man. 100%. And Escape from New York is one of my, it got to be probably in my top 10, man. I love Escape from New York a lot.
Snake, I wanted to be Snake Plissken. Let me tell you, I said, man, take my eye out. I want to be him. He was so fucking cool, man.
Dude, a couple years ago, I was gonna dress as Snake Plissken for Halloween, and I didn't end up dressing up. But I'm like, that's it. I'm gonna draw the cobra going down to my crotch, and I'm gonna get the eye patch, and I'm gonna slick my hair back, and
One more cult classic that I know, Tony, because we're from New Jersey, The Warriors. You know what I mean?
Come on, that's like,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The baseball. I was a baseball fury for Halloween, just like Rob Barrett was.
Ed still has the vest, actually.
Really? Oh,
man.
Dude, that's
the fucking
chaps. That's the coolest thing I've heard all day, bro. You were a fucking baseball fury for Halloween. Much respect. Oh man, the fucking Warriors is, oh my god, yeah, that's and again, I saw that at the theater when it came out, and then on the news there was this shit about, oh, where the Warriors is playing, there's been fighting in the parking lots after the showing of the movie, and that was on the news for a little while. They're like, people were like, oh, there's fucking fights breaking out after showings of the Warriors, and I was like, wow,
because
It's
people
like, wait till
were really,
2023.
people were really living those movies. I mean, I
yeah,
remember walking out of the theater after Red Dawn, going, "Come on, motherfucker, come on!"
yeah, yeah,
You read, so yeah, I get it, man.
yeah,
Those days
yeah.
were killer.
Yeah, man, the Warriors is, again, one of my favorite things in life. I have a Warriors T-shirt, and yeah, man, I worship fucking the Warriors.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
Definitely a fucking classic, man. Definitely. So
Love
so
it.
so I'm glad this worked tonight. I know we had a little technical problems at first, man, but so you guys got you're going to Berlin in December, right?
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, it's the 40th anniversary of the band, so that's God, it's crazy how fucking time goes, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah. I remember in 2014, we did our 30th anniversary tour with Solstice, and went all the way across the country to California. And I was like, man, 30th anniversary, holy shit. And I'm like, well, that's it. 30th anniversary. I'm like, that's probably the big number that's it, And if you would have said, what about your 40th anniversary? I would have said, yeah, no, that probably will not be happening.
and then here we are. And let's Solstice. I think Ryan's with SOD now, right? I think I saw something that they're doing. I think Ryan from Solstice, they're SOD now, right?
Yeah, MOD. MOD, yeah.
They're doing like I just saw that the other day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are playing with Autopsy at the Mass Destruction Festival. I love, obviously, Autopsy is like one of our favorites here, man. And
I love Autopsy.
That's a
fucking
great
love
fest
it
too, man. You'll like that fest. If you've never played it, it's a killer fest. I played it.
Never been to one, never played it, but played in Atlanta a few times, and always a good turnout in the Atlanta area. So yeah, we're definitely psyched, and to see Volcano. Fucking Volcano.
Yeah, I
still
saw
have
that.
vinyl. I have vinyl of Volcano, so I'm like, woo, Volcano, holy shit.
And they're playing with Caveman Cult, was another killer band, man.
Caveman Cult.
Yeah, they're playing with those. We used to play with Reapermancer, right? A lot over at Churchill's and stuff. Awesome guys.
Reapermancer. Yeah, Reapermancer. Blast from the past.
Yeah, so but they what you guys gonna do the States this next year coming up?
Well, actually, so we're coming to see you in early October, and then we're actually right now setting up a tour for the end of October that will have the Mass Destruction Fest in the tour. So we're gonna do like Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, maybe Knoxville, and a couple others, and then Atlanta. So that's the plan for that time, and then then the Mass Destruction the Never Surrender in December, and then there's some kind of horror metal fest in Tampa in January with Incantation. And we're playing that too. I don't even know what it's called yet.
I wonder if Death Metal Dave has something to do with that, Ed, because I heard there was something going on. So that might be something
I believe there's something there. I heard rumblings about Incantation. So
that we've already kind of confirmed that. So I don't know what the name of it is. Like, I talked to John from Incantation, and he didn't give me a name. He just kind of said it's going to be a horror metal festival. And I was like, perfect. I like both of those things.
Exactly, man. So dude, we really appreciate you coming on, man. I know, we totally appreciate you going through the effort that we had to go through. We actually recorded, for those who don't know, me and Ed recorded what did we do, 35 minutes, and then we couldn't get Pat on at first, so we're just glad we made it work, man.
I'm honored to be here with you gentlemen, and it's good to fucking be with like-minded metal fans, such as yourselves, because like we said, not everybody's on the same page these days.
Yeah, it's a different world, man. I mean, my wife struggled with it. I mean, we were talking about the Warriors. I try to get my wife to watch these movies because she's in her 30s, and she's like, she'll pass out on the couch. I'm like, how are you sleeping during this? You know, and
Yeah.
she's like,
Yeah, but
you know.
but yet I'll take my son, who's now 20, going to be 21, and I played that for him 4 or 5 years ago. And he's like, at first he's like, I don't want to watch a movie like that. And then when we were done, he's like, okay, that was one of the best movies I've ever seen. And I'm like, see, you
Yeah.
Just got to get them
Yeah.
past the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Once you get them in
Yeah.
there, you got to get them in.
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
yeah, no,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, some of America's youth is open-minded like that, and some are just, whatever, poisoned by the easiness of having the internet, and, oh, I don't like this, I'm going to watch this, no, I don't want to watch this, I'm going to watch this, and, short attention span.
Well, they're
movies
looking, you know
about
what they're
Barbie.
doing? Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
They're looking for the dude like you trading the Barbie tape. They want the Barbie video. They're looking for the guy like you in the Barbie side.
The
Like
Barbie,
if
really.
I know a guy who's telling me he's watching a Barbie movie, it better be about some fuck doll or something. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, better be rated X. Better be rated X.
Like, what is that? But yeah, man. Pat, we could talk to you all night, man. To be honest, because there's so much,
Yes.
shit. And
I could. I could.
Yeah, it's been fucking great, and I hope I get to catch up. I'm back and forth to Tampa, so I'm hoping I'll get there for one of you guys' next shows.
Hey, you know what? We should do this again in December when you're doing the horror thing, so we can promote it for you and and John and
Yeah.
push that, because we've been we had Eric on that was the guy from the Tampa Death Fest, so we were already pushing that for this with you, and we told him we were having you on. So, we're going to promote that all the way to Showtime. And, I don't think we'll come out of my house, but I'll be up there that night when you guys play.
Oh, cool. Man, and as far as that goes, Satan is going to be playing. And I mean, that was a band, that was in 81. That was a band, Blitzkrieg and Satan. That's shit I was growing up on, and I've never seen Satan before. And I am beyond excited to see Satan.
Yeah, I saw they were on there. I mean, that was actually the one band I was like, damn. I was like, at first I thought it was some kind of flyer that someone made with just bands they want. I was like, you got Satan on there? I was like, I mean, that Chord album was like, I don't know what year that was, but that was a great record. I mean,
yeah, it was like 83, 84. Yeah, that was Court and the Act is one of my favorite things, that there is, definitely.
Yeah, it's a great record. And yeah, man, we'll definitely have you back. We could talk definitely more movies. I mean, I don't know. I keep on getting, have you seen Terrifier 2?
You know what? I haven't seen either one of them, but a few people have told me to check them out. And I just look at that artwork and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like the clown, the monster clown thing. I'm like, yeah, the monster clown. How many times have I seen that already?
I thought the exact same thing, man. Right? And I saw the first one, and the first one's like really raw. It's like, it's a great movie, but it's definitely like the budget was low. Second one, man, I gotta say, like, I can't tell you the last probably like 10, 15 years. I haven't been like a lot of the slasher movies. I just, I'm like, okay, I don't like the screams that much, and I'm not into those kind of films.
Yeah. Me neither.
Terrifier. Damien Leone, that's how you say his name, the guy who makes the movies. But yeah, Art the Clown is definitely different, and it's a very fucked up movie. Like both of them are very like fucked up but entertaining. They have that 80s slasher vibes,
I'll tell you this. My daughter watches she's a horror freak. She loves horror. Like everything is
cool.
She won't watch it because she knows if she watches it, she probably will be too fucked up. That's how bad it is.
It's pretty
and are kind of fucked up like that we like. So
put it like this, Pat. It's worth your 2 hours, because I know what you're saying. There's a lot of times I'm like, this movie's lame. This one is worth your 2 hours. Even if you don't love it, you're gonna appreciate it, I believe.
And I have heard that the second Terrifier is better than the first one. I've heard that from people.
You'll appreciate the first one more when you see the second one, but the second one is definitely a better movie.
Okay. Before we part ways, did you watch Skinamarink?
No.
Do you know what that is?
No.
Oh, shit. Okay. There was a big blow up. It's like, this dude made this movie for like $8,000, and it's like this bizarre like horror movie that takes place all in a house with two little kids, and that's the whole movie. And people online are like, this is the most original, terrifying, creative, original thing that has been created in decades and decades. And it was one of those like where, you know, I hate to say the comparison of Blair Witch Project.
I was
like
going to
people
ask
like
you that. I didn't like that movie. I was going to about say that.
yeah,
Is that
that's
the
what I
same
mean.
kind
A
of
lot
thing?
of people are like, "Oh, Blair Witch Project is fucking stupid," and I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I was scared. I was pretty fucking scared, and I'm like, "Man, that was kind of cool and original." But yeah, Skinamarink, check that out. Like, I watched it, I didn't like it, but like a few people I know are like, "Dude, that's fucking. It was crazy, and it was so fucking eerie, and it was so original, and you know, it was just such a different concept." And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm like, I don't know, man. Not for
So is that
me,
a new
but
release? Is
just
that like a
curious.
recent? Is that a recent
Yeah,
release?
Oh
dude,
Or is
yeah, it
that
came out like maybe 4 or 5 months ago, something like that.
Okay, yeah, I have to check that out. Yeah, I have not. Yeah, man. I like I said, it's been yeah. So Ed, you got anything else you want to say?
Yeah, there's the
This has
new.
been an honor,
The,
man. It's been an honor, man.
Oh, it's been a pleasure for me to be with you guys, definitely. And Ed, good to see you again, man. And I'm glad, you know, we got to talk a little bit here because I don't think we've spoken much in the past. And Tony, yeah, man, great to see you too.
Thanks,
And
brother.
yeah, man, I love it. And of course, new Godzilla movie coming out.
Always good.
And new Cloverfield movie coming out.
Looking
Love
forward.
them all
And
too.
a new Spinal Tap movie's coming out. So
Really, I
yeah,
didn't know
that's
that.
oh yeah,
Oh,
2024 new Spinal Tap movie. So I'm all,
all
you
right.
know, I'll make sure I don't kill myself until I see those.
Yeah. And how anything else? Hellwitch, you want to anything coming up that you want to share? Besides, we know the Metal Fest is coming up. What that's you guys are playing on the Saturday night, right?
Yes, we are. We're playing on the Saturday night. Well, actually, that you mentioned it, just like 2 days ago, we're working on doing the European festivals next August, in August of 24. Like a thing of like where we go for like a week and we just play a few different festivals and then we come home. So
Yeah.
we're hoping that comes to fruition, but we're working on it. It seems like it's very feasible and it's very possible, and you know, it doesn't seem like it's out of the scope of our reality at this point for it to really happen. So yeah, we're hoping for the 40th anniversary we'll come to Europe and do something substantial for the second time, because December will be the first time, and if we go back, second time ever in Europe.
Well, if
Awesome.
you come to Lithuania and I'm not in Tampa at the time, we'll definitely come out and the beers are on me, man. I really appreciate you doing this with us.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it as well. And yes, definitely. Only if you have the funnel, man. I used to funnel beer, so yeah,
We
we'll have
got
to
the
get the
horns,
funnel.
They got the big fucking horns here that they all drink out of. So we have
Oh, okay, all right, that might work. If you put a hose on the end of it and use it as a funnel.
exactly. But yeah, so man, appreciate it, and everyone, thanks for listening. Pat, you can Hellwitch coming to Tampa, check them out, and
Yes.
we'll be talking to you hopefully very soon again, man. And Ed, anything else or?
Yeah, this was good for me, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah. New
Thanks,
album,
guys.
Annihilational Intercension.
There you go. Out now. Check it out. And thanks, guys.
Hail Satan. There we go.